Well, let's start with you've got this book. It's called Can't Slow Down: How 1984 Became Pop's Blockbuster Year. I loved how you started off in the introduction with the introduction of like, I'm 9 years old. I'm listening to the radio. You know, you're just starting out. And what did you discover at 9 years old when listening to, and what was that radio station? And do you know, what
Well,
were
it
your
was two radio stations.
Yeah.
It was two, because I was going back and forth, just like twisting the dial to avoid commercials. They were WLOL and KDWB. I'm not sure what their status today is. I think KDWB is still around, but I mean, because I haven't listened to pop radio in a really long time. But I was I didn't just become a music fan at 9. I was a music fan from really, really, really early. My uncle was a DJ, and I was obsessed with his records. I had a Fisher Price record player when I was 5. And I was a huge music fan always since I can remember. And so that day was more that I realized after the fact that 84 was a peak year because, that day sort of set it in stone. And I remember especially, I wrote about this only tangentially in the intro, that, when I was 10, in 85, I could hear the utter drop off in quality on the radio. Pop radio just like hit the toilet in 85 and stayed that way for a lot of the rest of the 80s, despite whatever, nostalgia people have. What I remember vividly is how bad things got after that. And I remember how bad things were before it too. I was paying really close attention as a kid I listened to Casey Kasem every week, like religiously. I didn't like have a notebook with the charts in it, but I was always fascinated by them. I would write things out a lot. I remember once when I was a kid, I was at at a relative's house that I used to stay at on weekends, and I decided I was going to make a list of every song ever, every single one. I think I got to about 200 before I gave up. And that was well before 84. That was earlier. So that was a moment where I just realized this is really happening. All these songs are great. When you're 9, you're not thinking like a cultural theorist, but it was along those lines.
And where'd you grow up? What city are you in?
I was in Richfield, which is a first ring suburb of Minneapolis. And that was a big part of it too, because I was living in the Twin Cities, and 84 is of course Purple Rain fever. And it's not just that, it's all sorts of fever. But that was the situation then, was just knowing how good radio was compared to how it had been just a couple of years earlier when it was all Air Supply. And it was all power ballads and adult contemporary, and it was very white, it was very dull. And I had always been a fan of R&B and funk and disco. And my uncle that I mentioned, who was a DJ, he was a dance music, he was a funk DJ, and I would just pour over his records. So I was already a big fan, and I had already kind of, I was already sort of a lifer in a sense, but I sort of got out of music from 85 through maybe 87 because the radio just stunk.